Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the QubicaAMF Tech Tip Podcast. This is a weekly podcast where we take you on a journey through the fascinating world of bowling technology and beyond. And I'm very excited today to have a returning guest. We have Kyle Burns on with us. Kyle, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Orly. How about yourself? Of
I'm doing great. Thanks again for coming on the show. I always appreciate your time.
course, my pleasure.
And Kyle, first off, if someone is new listening to the show, can you let everyone know a little bit about what you do with QubicaAMF?
Absolutely. So I am what's considered the documentation specialist here in the technical support department. I'm also the second shift supervisor here. So after about 5:30 Eastern time, I'm kind of the supervisor on duty until we close at 10. So yeah, basically, part is documentation. I'm basically keeping up, making sure both techs, making sure both customers that we got all the up-to-date knowledge available for everybody.
Hey, that's great. Thanks for what you do. And I'm sure everybody appreciates you being there, especially those late hours. But today, what I want to talk about, if someone is having trouble with their QPads, let's say connecting or just, maybe they're disconnecting from their system, what can they do to get those connected again? Or what are some of the issues that you might see that they could do to get those connected back up?
Right. So every so often we kind of see this. Sometimes maybe the keypads might freeze up a little bit. Sometimes they might have a little bit of issue connecting. Like let's say you kind of let it run out of juice or something before you got it to the charger. Then you go ahead and pick it up and having a little bit of problems. Uh, One of the first things that we would suggest that you do real quick is on the server computer itself. If you're able to get on there and open the task manager, there's a tab within there that says users. Now, each of those QPads has its own little designated user called a tablet and then a number. So tablet one, two, etc. You should see a list of them there that are connected or maybe look like they're connected but shouldn't be. Just go ahead and right click it and there's a button that says sign off. If you go ahead and hit that and then try to log back in on the QPad, you might find that that's all you needed and you should be good to go.
Okay.
Sometimes though you might find where you're trying to launch the RD client and maybe it doesn't connect at all. It'll kind of give you an error, some sort of generic little error code or something like that. Uh, what you're probably going to do there is double check the actual settings themselves on the QPad. So if anybody who has, say, an iOS device like an iPhone or iPad, this should be pretty familiar to you. Just hit the little home button to go back to the home screen. There should be a little gray settings gear option on there. Hit into that and go check under Wi-Fi. Just check which Wi-Fi you're connected to. You should be on one that's labeled as QPad Wi-Fi. So either QPad Wi-Fi or could possibly be QPad Wi-Fi 5. But just make sure you're signed on into that and not say some sort of guest network or the center network or something like that. You got to be on the actual Conquer network. So just double check, make sure that's good. And then within the list over on the side where you had Wi-Fi, if you kind of scroll that one down there, you should see an option for RD client. You go ahead and give that a click. You should then see some options for that. There's one that's called local network, and it's a little toggle switch that's either going to be grayish for off or green for when it's on. Just make sure that's toggled on, because if that happened to get toggled off somehow, then it's, even though you're connected to the network, that app itself is not really going to be able to actually interact over the network. And that's going to cause it to not log on.
All right. And I have one quick question for you on kind of on subject, a little bit off subject. As far as charging the QPads, let's say you have 5 QPads, you're only using 2 through the day. Should you leave those plugged in all night, all day, or should you kind of unplug them every once in a while? Can you, you know what I mean? Is it possible to overcharge them, I guess you'd say?
It's pretty much like any other device with newer battery technology. They're at least a little bit better at kind of sensing and trying to prevent overcharging. But just to be safe, if you know that these are pretty well charged up, say at the end of the night, maybe they hadn't been used that particular shift or something like that, it would probably be a good idea maybe just turn it off altogether and have it unplugged, because then it's not taking a charge, but then it's also not really releasing a charge all that quickly. So that next day you could just turn it back on and you should be at pretty much 100% full power if that's how you left it. I mean, if you do find that at the end of the night, you're running low, you're at 10% or 15%, something like that, I'd say you can go ahead and charge that. Let that charge overnight. It should hit 100. Even when it gets close to 100. I believe a lot of the times Apple has a kind of charging sense at about 80%, where it'll kind of trickle charge it up to the last 100, just so it doesn't try to overcharge the battery. So for the most part, you should probably be okay. But if you do know that you maybe have like, 10 QPads, but you find yourself using, say, the same 5 or 6 most of the time, except for, a real busy time, a real busy weekend, or a real busy event or something like that, where you really need all of them out there, I'd say take the kind of couple that you don't tend to use as much, maybe turn them off
Okay.
and then just turn them on right when you're ready for them. They should be at about 100% charge if that's how you left them.
All right, Kyle. Well, that's all I have for you today. And anyone that is listening, if you are new to the show, make sure to go back and listen to all the episodes. Or I mean, there's so much knowledge that we are sharing with everyone. Quick tips on how to get stuff fixed. Sometimes you don't have time to jump on a call with someone like Kyle. So if you're listening to these shows, you might come across them. You're like, oh wow, I just had that issue the other day. I could take a little listen and fix it real quick. And share with your friends. Let people know Tech Tip Podcast is out there, and we're available on, I think, all major platforms. And again, Kyle, I appreciate your time today, and we hope to have you back on the show soon.
Of course, my pleasure, Harley. Always great to chat with you.
All right, you have a good one.
You too.